Hello, everyone. This is Sam. I'm the author of Eathel the Bastard. The first two chapters are online. It's a total of about 16,000 words so far. So even though it's only two chapters, it's still something that you can start to sink your teeth into. I guess I want to bite the bullet and put out the question as early as possible of how to fund this. Can this be funded? I think if you look through some of the videos in my back catalog, you can see me wrestling with this, right? Like, I was talking about how I didn't want to do subscriptions. I was talking about how I wanted to do products or something. I don't know. I guess I kind of wanted to open it up as early as possible to see what would be worth it for you. Like, let's say we do a $4 a month subscription, right? I'll just put that out there, right? 7, 8 years, however long I've been in sales and like business development. By the way, I'm doing this full time, right? One of the reasons my room is so messy, or my office is so messy, and I'm sorry about that, is because, you know, it's I'm taking it one day at a time, but and I've got plenty of savings, so I'm not in any kind of like this was planned out. I put a lot of thought into this, but I feel like this is really something that I want to do. But I want to turn like I want to turn I want to help found. I want to curate and then pass to the community like the I want to plant a flag for like the fantasy fiction community on Substack, right? And maybe it turns out that Substack's not the right forum for this. Um, but I want to turn this into a party for people that love fantasy and people that love history. My story is based in a pre-Angevin empire, but uh, more, we go through kind of like we come into an Angevin era empire. It has to do with someone who is I would say it's a young adult novel for smart young adults who like Dune and are okay with trading a galaxy for a whole planet of fantasy. I call it global fantasy because the world is so intricate, textured, and complex, and I hope to prove that to you with the free. I want the narrative of the story, right? The meat of it, free, always, right? No matter what, right? But for those people who want, and I know you're out there, right? For those people out there who want to join like a fantasy party that they can jump into whenever they want to, if you want to geek out with real medievalists, like I wrote down some ideas. So like, oh, and I also have some content too. Like the other part of it is too that a benefit to doing this full time is I write full time. I fill books like this. These are like some cheapo moleskin stuff. Like I fill books like this like nobody's business with new sketches and scenes. So I'm thinking about a model where I release like a weekly update of somewhere between like 2 and 3,000 words. That's like a vignette. It's a literary term for like kind of a sketch, right? It's not a short story. I don't want to oversell it, but it's like kind of a vignette. There's a story in there, and I'll give you kind of like an example of one. And I'm sorry this video is long. You guys are great for being patient with me. I appreciate it. But I wrote down some ideas about, because I want this to like, and if I'm doing it full time, like I've got time to book and convince like actual people who are smart about this stuff and knowledgeable to come on the show. And also, there would be spoilers too. If you're a fantasy fan and an author and a writer, I want you to come and be part of this community. Like imagine if so I've got, and again, I think that the case for this will only get stronger. The proof is in the pudding. I'll continue to post, and it's going to be free. The narrative. If you are intrigued by this narrative, if you are intrigued by this world, and I think that if you're into this sort of thing, this book is not for everybody, right? I'm just going to go ahead and say that, right? Dune is not for everybody, right? World building isn't. So if this isn't for you, that's okay. But what would be great is if you think somebody who might like it is, you know, is in your life, and I bet that there is somebody, pass it along. It's 18 plus for simply for gritty medieval combat violence that really tries to portray some of the excitement and the thrill, but at the same time, the horror of war and the almost absurd, grotesque reality of it. And we can talk about how well I do or I don't do that. And I'm super open about my writing process, and I want to, talk to you guys about so I've got 3 books outlined, right? We've got Eathel the Bastard, and then we've got Ikaragoon, which is the second one, Ikaragoon. And then the third one is as yet unnamed, but that one, the plot is all structured out. So if you know somebody in your life who likes X-Men and likes Red Rising, the series by Pierce Brown, I was about to Pierce Brosnan. It's by the guy who used to play James Bond and was in Remington Steele. Do you guys know? Are there any other old people like me who know? Does no one know what Remington Steele is? That's old TV, man. Like commercials were on, and it's great. But no, Pierce Brown is the name. And if you haven't read Red Rising, it's a great story that begins with a slave uprising on Mars, and that starts to spreads out into the solar system, and it's pretty awesome. It's pretty amazing. The early parts of Red Rising are what I really want to evoke because that book was so exciting, as well as this baroque and complex and intricate caste system, right? um, who this book is for: Dune fans, fans of X-Men. There's a magic system that has a lot of similarities with X-Men. Their powers are potent, but at the same time debilitating. They're based on mental illnesses. I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. I have for my entire life. I'm pretty open about that. Um, it just, and it kind of feeds into some depression and other mental illnesses. Sarah, the character who is in AFL's head, right, is an artistic representation of obsessive compulsive disorder, negative thoughts, and some of my personal experiences with the anguish of mental illness, right? And there are other characters with these manifestations of mental illness that are both strengths, and magical types, but at the same time extremely debilitating. AFL and Sarah, Serixathena is her real name. We mostly hear her referred to as Sarah, Sera, and she is, she's a character in her own right. But that's something interesting, and that's going to be the subject of the third book, where we've got to kind of, I won't get into too much detail. For those who would like to participate in the story, imagine if so I've got 3 books, right? I've got ideas for other ones because I did talk about global fantasy. But I also want to talk about concepting with writers, and then setting somebody up with almost like a franchise of the story where they're on their payroll and they work within the universe that we also change and create, right? Anyway, so some ideas of this fantasy party, for writers and fans of this era, and who want to talk about how this era was bloody and capricious, but also a place where there was real human warmth and where things may not have been so different in a lot of ways when it comes to human social interactions. Maybe they were a little bit more pronounced and a little bit more codified, but I see a lot of similarities in the stuff that I read about the Middle Ages, and I read a lot too. So on the Middle Ages, so I really love. I love the idea of taking a podcast kind of format and just a 30-minute conversation with a real medievalist who really knows what he or she is talking about, he, she, or they, and really can get into the meat of what kind of impact did it have. So the Angevin Empire, the main key point of this is you have an English king who is bowing to a French monarch, right? This may not sound like a big deal, but it was at the time. Imagine if, well, I'm not going to get into contemporary politics. I'm in a fantasy world for a reason, okay? But uh, the way that I lost my train of thought. Sorry. You're gonna get a lot of raw, unedited stuff on this, but I guess imagine also like if so there's a self-contained story within these three books, right? The first one's Eathel the Bastard. It's based on the early years of William the Conqueror, but with a far more sympathetic character in the place of William the Conqueror, who also suffers and contends with mental illness in a world that they're called the Revangian, which which in one of the languages, Old Terra, means afflicted and haunted, right? Um, and so there's this. It's very rare. It's kind of like the Force. It's hereditary partially, but at the same time, it can pop up in other places. But that's one of the reasons that this distinction between nobility and common people, who the Terrans, original name, right? Terrans, Earth, and everything. But like there was something about Tera, right? And I know that it evokes Earth, but like I don't know. It just had this power and kind of almost like cross genre intrigue, if that's even a term. But I like Terra for it, and so a lot of the languages are based on kind of like a Vulgate idea, where you have like Latin being, sort of like devolving, may not be the right word, but into the vulgar Latins that turned into like the Romance languages. So you have like Old Terra, which is Old Terran, sort of like a Latin-esque language, and then you have like Terran, Frontier Terran. The Crusades are kind of a part of this too. There are many, overlapping religions and mythologies. I'm sorry, excuse me. There are many overlapping religions, mythologies, and there's also a cool thing called the Tandrat, which is inspired by the Landsrat of Dune, just built out into this very intricate and Byzantine, like parliamentary body that features an interaction between the commoners, whom the Terrans call Desmenda or Demenda. That's the common, the people, the populace, the proletariat, right? And anyway, so you get some of the best conflicts, I think, come when you have the middle class in class conflict, basically any kind of class conflict. But if you have that middle class, right, the gentry, the gentry, and then the mercantilists, right, the commercial kind of people, the up and comers, right, the self-made men and women, right. That part of it, the conflicts that emerge with like an emerging powerful class of non-noble people who increasingly have larger shares of the money. I want that to be a dynamic, and there's a lot of great kind of like, Thomas Cromwell, Wolf Hall kind of stuff. I want to have ideally, if we can get the rights to this stuff, I want to have like watch parties, lives, But just real quick, some ideas. I want to have a nonstop fantasy party where we can dive into this period in history, but also dive into this period in history, the Angevin Empire, and how it might relate to where we're at today, but also this moment in history today, right? And how that, the political environment, what that can tell us about the current political environment. I'm American, and there is no paucity of things to talk about in the United States. We're not going to get, too far into the weeds on that. At least I don't think so, but I like how history rhymes, and obviously I'm putting this in place. I have a fantasy universe, but I intend for it to be very, very gritty. And even though there's a magic system, we're not even really going to meet magic users outside of the main character until the third book, which is when they will, until the back half of the second, and then the third one is the focus. That's where they're the focus, and you have this community of magic users who are standing up for themselves in a very kind of like complex way. I want to do podcasts where we get real medievalists, real experts, to talk about the differences in the book. And a note on this book, right? Oh, wait. So we've already talked about who this is for. something that revolves around the drama as well, like potentially leaves open the resolves. So just know that at the very least, I have 3 books that have a resolution that is satisfying. And for the writers among you who want to participate in like that, I kind of want to frame it as like let's say George R. R. Martin let you into his like outlining process, and you didn't have to wonder like, oh shit, like is he going to really actually finish these books, and is it going to be as satisfactory? And I know that like everybody loves the 12 book, Wheel of Time thing, and I totally get that. But my interest right now is a strong story, and that story resolves in the first trilogy really nice and really cleanly. It may or may not leave open the door for that storyline to continue. I don't know if it's going to be with the same characters. I mean, I do know, but like, I don't know if we're going to get into that. But the point is, the story is concepted, and I know it's just a trilogy right now, but I have all the time that I need to, do this. One real quick question that I wanted to ask too is, I have an Etsy page where I'm going to start like putting these. I write longhand, and I was just seeing what this says, and I was thinking of like, I'm turning on subscriptions just to turn it on and get things started. Like, I know I was talking about no subscriptions earlier, but I want to see what people value, and I want to turn it on, because I need to I had a doctor's appointment this morning that I missed because I didn't sleep much last night because, I was, I'm in a good place financially, but at the same time, I was worried, like long term, there's zero guarantees. And, you know, I believe that this can find an audience. I believe in this story, and that's why I'm focused on it 110%. And I can tell you that every single cent that I get is rent and healthcare. That's it. Like, and I'll tell you when that stops being the case so that you can decide, like, all right, is this story really that good? And hopefully I've posted enough of it by this point. We're coming out. I want to do like 2 to 3,000 word updates unless people are like, this sucks. Um, Anyway, that's my announcement. I'll leave you with that. And I'll also leave you with this. I'm going to try to put the link in somehow in here, but I want to call dibs on what I believe is the very first writing or author blooper reel in existence. And so I'll post the video, skip to the last 10 minutes for me, like stumbling upon some writing that I did not like. It's good. I think you'll smile. All right. Take care.